Validated Ministries. I'm Samantha Hudson, and that's mine over there, Eleanor. I'm the COM moderator, and I am so pleased to get to introduce you to these ministries here. And so as I was thinking about, how are we going to kick this off, I was thinking to myself, what is validated ministry? Validated ministry is our denomination's recognition that ministry happens beyond the jurisdiction of the church. And so at COM, we've been given the responsibility by you, the Presbytery, to recognize or validate these ministries. And sometimes we even have the distinct joy to help co-create these ministries with the ministers as they come to us. And so these ministers are serving not just in ways that are valid, right, but ways that are necessary and integral to our church as a whole. Oftentimes these ministries are serving a very particular need that arises, or it is serving in a connectional manner that extends beyond one single congregation. And we are just so glad to have the panel here today. Let me take a moment to introduce each of them to you. On the end there we have José Irizarry. He is the Director of Education at the Board of Pensions. We have Tom Summers, who is the chaplain, residential chaplain at Rydell Park, serving in senior adult ministry. We have Megan LeCluyse, who is the campus minister at the Christian Association at the University of Pennsylvania. And we have Jeannie Lee, who is the educational evangelist for the Korean network of churches here in this presbytery. I take a little bit of pride in that title because that was one of the positions that we helped co-create at COM. And so we're so pleased to have each of you here with us today. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to this conversation, Ministry on the Edges.
Thank you, Samantha. So again, it is indeed a joy and privilege to have you all to share with us a little bit about the edges of ministry that you're exploring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the microphone to you, and you can share who wants to go first. That'll be fine. And just share a little bit about what is the focus of your ministry, what it entails. Maybe think about what population you serve, what context, and how it's impacting folks in whatever context you're serving. So who would like to go first? All right, you're going to start, Jeannie.
Sure. Thanks for an opportunity to be here. So I serve a network of Korean churches made up of about 5 Korean Presbyterian churches. And I kind of see my ministry as twofold. First, I work as a liaison, and I like to say more of a bridge builder between the Presbytery and the network of Korean churches to help the Korean church think about ways that they could be more intentional in engaging the greater body of Christ that is the Presbytery of Philadelphia. And then the second fold is working within the Korean network to help them navigate and reflect upon the issues of intergenerational and intercultural issues that may arise within the church. And then how can we create a space for the younger generations who may speak a different language than their parents or their grandparents to feel like they're actually an integral part of the church. So I walk alongside of the churches to see how to engage them in a more intentional way.
Hi, it's great to be here. So I serve as the campus minister of the Christian Association at UPENN, and we have been there for 127 years. We're an ecumenical campus ministry that kind of maps pretty well mainline Protestant campus ministry. In the 20s through probably 50s, 60s, we housed 6 denominational campus ministers at the CA, and now we have me as full-time staff. We are the only campus ministry at Penn that is moderate to progressive, which gives us the opportunity to work with a lot of different students, and a lot of students who just want to ask questions about faith, or eventually find their way to us. We serve both grad and undergraduate students, and the student you might assume who walks into a campus ministry at an Ivy League school may not look like the students that actually come to the CA. I would say probably 3/4 of the students, at least that I work with, are on 2/3 to full financial aid, and that's the only reason they are at Penn. I work with a number of first-gen and/or low-income students. They are diverse in an incredible amount of ways. Some of them come from mainline Protestant backgrounds, some come from more conservative backgrounds and are moving more progressive, some are new Christians. They are a racially diverse group. Probably about 2/3 of the students at the CA are students of color, and a number of our students identify as part of the LGBTQ community. We parent the Queer Christian Fellowship, which is a student group for them to talk about the intersection of sexuality and faith. We also have a mentoring program with Penn's Upward Bound program, and have a program called Slanguage, which has been taught by a volunteer for 20 years. And a lot of the students who come to Slanguage are non-native English speakers, often the spouse of an international grad student or postdoc, who their lives, I have learned, are very limited in what they get to do because of the visas they are on. And so Slanguage provides a place not only for them to work on conversational English, but to find community with other people like them. And so that is just a brief taste of what all happens at the CA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am at the Ronald Park, which is a Presbyterian continuing care retirement community up in Abington Township. I have been in there for about 6.5 years now, and just absolutely loving what I get to do. We have a small community of about 500 residents that are there on 3 different levels of care. Our independent living, our personal care, and our skilled nursing center. And between all of those combined, it comes up to almost a population of, a census on a regular basis of about 500 people. Very, very diverse background. When Ronald Park started out 40-some years ago, it was entirely Presbyterian. And as we learned a little bit earlier downstairs, our ministry used to be known as the, I hate to say this, the nursing home for widows and older women. I think we used the word older in the process. I kind of have a problem with that now since I am chronologically enhanced and above the age of 60. I don't like that word older anymore, but it's great. Our population is very, very diverse as well. Right now at Ronald Park, more than half of our residents are Jewish. And with our staff members, we have approximately 450 people on staff, which is a very, very diverse group of people who are Christian, who are Jewish, who are Muslim. And so I have this almost 1,000-member congregation of every kind of tradition you could possibly imagine. And I'm the solo pastor, which makes it so much fun. But I spend a great deal of my time just interacting with our residents and providing for a wide variety of worship experiences and study of Scripture for everyone that's involved. But I think my biggest role that I see there for myself is that I spend most of my time working with people as they are coming to the end of their lives and being able to be there with them, to be a presence of God, to be a sense of comfort, a sense of compassion, but more than anything else, to be somebody who can bring the grace of God to work in any situation. And so, it's a lot of fun. And I get to play Scottish fiddle music for them all the time.
When's that happening here?
I didn't bring a fiddle with me. I'm sorry. Next time.
Well, thank you for the invitation. As you can see, I decided to dislocate my shoulder just to bring an object lesson about the Board of Pensions. We get recovered when something like this happens, literally. You know that the Board of Pensions is the agency of the church that manages the resources of the church to provide benefits for ministers, pastors, and church employees. The benefits, you know them, are pensions, health coverage, death and disability, and also retirement savings plans. Now, the board has been doing this work for 300 years, As you know, we celebrated with you, being within the bounds of this presbytery. But the group that I work with just started 2 years ago. I am a member of a new tribe at the Board of Pensions, which is the education team. The board decided to take all of those programs that were intended to help ministers maximize the use of their benefits and also understand how to better use those benefits, to put them all together under the umbrella of education. I became the first vice president of education, and as part of my work was to envision what will be the mission of this new team. And we decided to do something that was not done before, and is to look at education from the perspective of this agency as something we should do through the arc of ministry. Meaning that we will going to tailor based on the needs of pastors and ministers in various stages of their development, from recently ordained, actually from seminary student to recently ordained, mid-career, late career, and also to focus on wholeness, not only on physical well-being and also financial well-being, but also how those two things connect with spirituality and vocation. Under the premise that healthy pastors lead healthy congregations, and they should be healthy in all these areas. So the challenge in these 2 years have been to create these programs. We do this through seminars throughout the U.S. and Puerto Rico. We lead workshops, different presbyteries, also different events of the national church. We have a series of online modules for anyone who wants to visit our website in different topics. We're enhancing that next year. And we serve face-to-face, I would say every year, close to 1,000 members, and online, 3,000 members.
So why don't you hold on to that, Mike? Jose, we'll go the opposite direction this time around. One of the things that's coming up, obviously, is Thanksgiving. So a lot of folks are going to be going to visit families and telling stories around dinner tables. So this is not like a promo or shameless plugs for each of your ministries per se. This is like gathering around the Thanksgiving table and sharing stories about what you've been up to since we've last gathered. So that said, the next question, if you could think about, what would you share around a table? And this being the table that we're gathering around, what would you share about a highlight of ministry that you've experienced that has been a particular expression of the gospel of late?
Well, I would say that when we look at the work of the Board of Pensions, it may seem from the outside business center, and for good reason. It's about investment, management of investments. It's about planning for benefits and negotiating those. But the work that I do is actually shaped through a theology of benefits. It is the conviction that we are called as people of God to show our compassion and care for one another. And we do that because the desire of God for our lives is what we call shalom, which is translated in many instances as peace, but more accurately, it's about well-being. It's the desiring well-being and abundant life to those who are part of the community with us. So I think that the work that I do, I hope that the work that I do in education of the board is an expression of that care for people. And I pray that in my work, I can express and share that shalom, that desire for well-being. Because when people experience life abundantly, they are free to serve God in their ministries more freely.
Well, I think the only word that would come to my mind for my context of ministry is definitely community. We are a very diverse group of folks at Rattle Park. As I said, we have Presbyterians and Lutherans and Methodists. We have Roman Catholics. We have a large percentage of our residents today are Jewish. We have staff members that are Muslim, and yet we all come together for our various ways of celebrating the fact that we are in community together. One of the funny things that I have is every Thursday morning I run a Bible study. We typically have 25 to 30 people that come out. And we keep alternating in what we're going to do. My Jewish residents want to study the New Testament because they've never studied the gospel before. And we get a chance to get into some really deep conversations. Right now we're in the midst, on behalf of my Jewish residents, trying to come to terms with Paul's letter to the Romans, which is so much fun. We're having a great time with it. My Christian folks that come to this Bible study, they want to study all of the Hebrew scriptures because they've never really gotten into the stories of that. And so we've had, just finished up several months ago, a very wonderful study of the book of Deuteronomy. And my Christian folks were like, wow, this is really cool. We never knew this before. So it's great to do it. But we do come together as a community over many, many different things. And sometimes it's spurred by tragedy. 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, we had a prayer vigil at Ronald Park for all of our residents in the aftermath of the shootings at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And we gathered together to pray for peace and to pray for understanding and to seek comfort and hope for one another. This past week on Friday afternoon, we gathered together once again as a diverse community to remember the events of Kristallnacht and the beginning of what became known as the final solution and the Holocaust. And for us as a group of people to say, never again. This week, we're going to be gathering together one more time on Thursday so that we can have a joint celebration of Thanksgiving. Because in spite of our differences, in spite of the diversity, in spite of this rich variety of faith, we are a community of faith. And we come together to worship. And that is probably one of the most exciting things that I get to do.
So before I tell you the story, I'm going to apologize to any Wharton grads because I may not lift Wharton up in the best light, even though there are a ton of Wharton graduates that are good people with good values. But being on a campus, one of our rabbis said last year that Penn is in the shadow of Wharton, and that both physically and metaphorically. So I want to tell you about a young man named Daniel who graduated last May. Daniel moved to the U.S. from China halfway through his junior year of high school when he transitioned from living with his mom to living with his dad. He got acculturated to the U.S. by getting involved with sports. He became a tri-season athlete and through his Chinese Baptist youth group. So when he came to Penn, he came to the CA, as we were called the Christian Association. And so he assumed that that was the Christian group. So he came during new student orientation. And he wanted to go into sports management. Sports is what gave him life. Dan is a Wharton graduate, and he very quickly became pulled up into the role that majoring in finance and going to work on Wall Street is the end-all and be-all of a successful life. And that's why I gave that caveat at the beginning, is because that myth pervades Penn. Making money and finding a prestigious job consumes students. And Dan kind of got sucked into that and was where his summer internships were until last January. He was struggling to find a job when he graduated. And we were at a retreat over MLK weekend on vocational discernment. And Dan had said that his new plan was to graduate and go to San Francisco, where his dad lived, where he moved when he came to the U.S., and to start working with the San Francisco Giants. And I literally started crying because I said, Dan, it is so wonderful to hear that you are going where you've always loved and where you felt led. And so that is part of, for me, what the campus ministry is about, is in these myths that pervades Penn's campus. I mean, I had a student who thought she'd be living paycheck to paycheck, but she didn't make 6 figures. Helping them realize what it means to live a life that follows God and follows their gifts and talents and vocations.
Thanks for that story. So I really think a part of my ministry and what I love about my ministry is having what I call sacred dialogues. And so one of my main jobs is to visit Korean churches and hear the stories of the Korean members. And I had the opportunity to go to a church called Wallingford Presbyterian Church, and the pastor invited me to do an educational session on for their first generation parents, and how do you have conversations with your children where there is language barrier and the cultural barrier seems to be increasing day by day. And we were hoping to make this into a series, and I approached this from the aspect of trying to think through the lens of first generation Korean parents and also the lens of the second, third generation children who are having a hard time understanding where they belong. And so oftentimes our Korean American, or honestly Asian American children are taught that your identity is in the job that you have, the amount of money that you make, and the honor that you bring to your parents through those occupations that you have. And that's the only way they kind of see themselves, and that's the way they measure themselves. And for the and they see their parents as only wanting that path for them. So I approach on the aspect of how can we have dialogues based on our identity in Jesus Christ? That whether you're 60-50, Korean, first generation Korean speaking, or you are a 16, 14-year-old who grew up in the US and who have both Western and Korean thinking and predominantly speak English, where do you find that common ground? And it exists in Jesus Christ, that we are all called to be God's beautiful children because of who Jesus Christ is. And you could actually have a conversation with your children, despite the language, difficulties, because you have that common ground. And oftentimes Korean churches shy away from having those tough conversations. And I was so encouraged by this pastor who invited me to lead an educational session talking about this critical issue. And then afterwards, having parents, have a Q&A session. So I stayed around and had conversations with parents who came up to me and so thankfully were open about the struggles that they're having raising their children in a foreign country. And for them, they said they never had a chance to talk about these issues. They never thought that they could actually come to church with these issues and have dialogues around it. And so I was so thankful that we're creating these intentional spaces where people could voice the challenges they're facing, living as what they consider to be a perpetual foreigner in what is now their homeland. And creating space where we could say, you know what, it's okay to have these issues. That we could talk about it. We could pray for each other. We could walk along and journey with each other and say that at the end of the day, we're still called to be one body of Christ because of Jesus. So that sacred dialogue is what I really love about my ministry.
So thanks, hold on to that. We'll go for our last question. We'll go the other way around. This is a beautiful reflection of the story of us that is through your validated ministry. And a reminder, validated means that you're not on an island, but you've been sent by us, that you've been commissioned by us to do your work where you are. And so that said, if you could finally share a little bit about how your ministry is an extension or connected to other entities of the church, and maybe along those lines, a final word of encouragement to all of us about your ministry and how we can continue to support and pray for you.
Good question. So I think as Korean Americans, especially first generation immigrants, we have this idea of this is just us and then there's the others. So we became so insular because we felt like we have to protect our heritage, our tradition, and so we were afraid to engage with the outside world. But we want to break down that wall, and I use that word intentionally. We want to break down that wall and say, no, God has called us to be also outward. Help us to recognize that we are a tangible members of the greater body of Christ, and that our voice matters. And I think it's something that is a little bit of like an unknown frontier for a lot of Korean churches. How do we engage with the greater body, and where do we belong in that? So my prayer request for you guys is to pray for dialogues, not just superficial dialogue, but really intentional, grounded dialogues that brings these issues of racial tension forward. and be able to have critical conversations. And pray for the Korean congregations to have the courage to be involved in that. Not saying, you know what, that's them, this is us, we're going to protect who we are, and that's good enough, and it's not good enough. God calls us to be part of the greater community, and I want the Korean churches to embrace that with all their heart, and also with their lives. So if you could pray for the Korean congregation in that way.
One of the things that I want to do is affirm any ways that you and your congregations are staying in touch with your students who might be away at college. I think any communication, any form of contact is great. Be that a care package, maybe especially during finals. I've heard of somebody who the church administrator sent them their bulletin every week. And just kind of the reminder of what was going on back home. Some churches help their students when they go to college find a campus ministry or a congregation where they are going. And part of why I think this too is that while parents are great, we need people other than their parents making sure that they are being spiritually cared for and knowing that they are cared for by people other than their parents. Be that their pastor, a congregation member, a youth person, all of those contact points are incredibly important. And I'm grateful for the work that you all do in those areas. So in terms of being connected in with this presbytery, we do have several congregations that help support the CA, and we are very grateful for that. We have a couple board members. Jesse Garner is one of our board of directors members, as well as Jeffrey Rowland, who is a ruling elder at Oxford Presbyterian Church. And finally, one of our main things is a dinner and Bible study every Wednesday night. And churches sometimes provide this dinner. In fact, Jeannie and I have been working for one of the Korean congregations to come do this in the spring semester. And part of what we love about this is often a congregation will bring 3 to 5 of their members to come eat with the college students. And you get to meet the college students and be energized by their boundless energy and passions and knowledge about what random subject they're studying. But I also love that they get to see, I'm going to use the term older, meaning older than 22. Older adults living out their faith. Yes. People from their later 20s all the way through life, continuing to engage in their faith, and I love to see that model for the young people that I'm working with, so that they may see themselves down the road. And one of, I would say, the most encouraging things to me is how many of my young alums are engaging with local congregations wherever they move to after college. It stuns me, because most of those, especially the really committed students, are involved in a congregation. Which to me affirms part of why campus ministry is so vital, is it keeps them connected to their faith and to practicing and living it, so then they can go be the young adults in all of your congregations.
Thank you. Well, I guess I try to maintain a lot of connections with the larger church in my work and my ministry. The members of my community, the residents at Rydell, come from a lot of different congregations. And so we try to keep in contact with those churches and let our congregations know what's going on with our people, which is very good. I spend a lot of time working at trying to increase that level of connection with the local churches as much as I possibly can. One of the things I get to do is, which is really unique, my worship services are at an unusual time. I do worship services on Wednesday morning and afternoon, and then I do a service on Sunday at 3 o'clock, which frees me up on Sunday morning to do one of two things. I either am out doing pulpit supply for a lot of congregations, and I've done that for many, many congregations here in Philadelphia, always available for that type of thing. But the other thing is, every once in a while, this is really strange as a pastor, but I get to go to church. And I get to go and worship, and I don't have to worry about the sermon, and I can listen to you, and I can critique what you have to say, jot down some notes that maybe I can use at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's wonderful. I also have the opportunity, which is another part of my life that I'm involved in, is to be a part of the Commission on Preparation and Minister Membership. We get to deal with all of our candidates that are going through ministry, school, training, in seminary, and doing their field education work, and all kinds of things along those lines. and we deal with any of the pastors who are coming into the presbytery. So we have the opportunity to do the inquisition and to examine you on all of the aspects of your faith. And there's always a question I want to ask, but I never get the chance to do that. But I would like to know your view on supralapsarianism. I never get the chance to ask anybody that. But I stay connected with the larger church as well. In fact, one of the things I got to do earlier this year was to, and this was tough. Somebody had to do it though. I had to go out to Lake Tahoe, Nevada, to be out there for the annual meeting of the Presbyterian Older Adults Ministry Network, where I did some workshops for them while I was out there. Thanks to Bill Young, he got me to do that. But somebody's got to go out to Lake Tahoe, and I figured, here I am, Lord, send me. So I get a chance to stay connected with the larger church all of the time, and it really is a joy in my life to do that.
Thank you. Because we are an agency of the church, we engage with sort of a wider set of entities. We relate to the GA. If you go to the General Assembly, usually we have a couple of educational events prior to the General Assembly around issues of pastoral compensation. We relate to presbyteries as we deliver seminars across the country. We relate with the Presbyterian Mission Agency, especially with their caucuses, those who are serving communities of color. We plan with them events, and then we also partner with them in delivering some education for communities of color in the Presbyterian Church. We also relate to other ecumenical bodies. We are part of what's called the Association of the Church Benefits Association. It's a large association of all religious groups that offer benefits to their ministers. This year, we're going to have, for the first time, a group that is going to be working just on education and financial literacy. I'm one of the founders of that new group. There were 4 people, 1 Episcopalian, 1 Presbyterian myself, 1 Orthodox Jew, and 2 free evangelicals, because they need 2 whenever there's a Presbyterian or an Episcopalian. But they work very well together, and we have fun. And the reason I think we have fun, and it's something that is my final word in terms of the way in which you can support validated ministry, is that I really believe that we have to pay attention to what we in the Latino communities call acompañamiento and companionment, being together. I think people who do validated ministry need people who are in the congregational setting to walk with us and to invite stories like you're doing right now, and to listen to those stories and ask questions. Because what we are trying to do every day is just standing one more bridge from the congregation, where faith is nurtured in community, to the wider world. And if you walk alongside those who do that ministry, we will be certainly more empowered to continue to do the work that God is calling all of us to do together. Thank you.
So we will have a chance to lift in prayer our validated ministers here, as well as all those serving in validated ministries as a part of worship. But we are deeply grateful for the way that you bear witness to the good news of Jesus, where you have been called to serve in this time and place. And we encourage you, before you leave today, if you have any other questions or comments, to engage them as you see them walking around. So again, one more time, thank you for your ministry.
Some leaves introduction later on during the worship service, but I wanted to give you the heads up of what that is about. This will conclude the meeting portion of our time together.